Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet B Rayne, and today my guest is Richard Hartnett. He has over 30 years experience as an oracle reader specializing in the tarot. He's a nationally certified psychic and master tarot instructor with the American Tarot Association. He offers tarot readings, dream interpretation, and palmistry. And his background includes lots and lots of different things. I've met Richard at our Body, Mind, and Spirit Expo here in Denver. And being part of a spiritual community in Denver, we always seem to cross paths in different ways. We get to know about everybody that does this type of work in our community. And Richard's one that I've always been attracted to because I feel like he does an amazing job, and he gave me a tarot reading a year or so ago, and it was amazing, and I was very grateful. So welcome to the show, Richard. I'm so glad that you're on here.
And I thank you, and I'm grateful to be here.
So, Richard, what got you into oracle and tarot readings? Because you've been doing this for 30 years, and I bet 30 years ago there weren't many people out there doing this.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's a little bit of a story that starts when I was in the military. I went to a party, and somebody had a tarot deck, and they pulled out the cards, and they started to show me the cards, and I immediately had an attraction to it. It was like they were magic, and they were like speaking to me, like kind of glowing and that kind of thing. And but the person didn't really understand the tarot. And so that kind of what put it in the back of my mind. But after I got out of the service, I was in a record store. You remember record stores?
Where we had albums, and
Yeah.
we bought albums so many years ago.
And posters on the wall and incense and all that stuff. Well, they had a display case. And in the case, I swear the case was empty except for this one deck. And I looked at it and I said, I think those are tarot cards. So I asked to see them, and they showed them to me, and I bought the deck. So I took the deck home, and I opened up the deck, and I looked at the pictures, and I looked at the little white book, and I tried to figure out how did they get what they said in the little white book from what the illustration was on the cards. I couldn't see the connection. So then I went to all places. I was in a grocery store, and I saw a book by a woman named Eden Gray, and I bought her book, and I did the same thing. I looked at what she said about the cards and tried to make sense of the illustration and what they were saying, and it didn't make sense to me. Now, I was very intellectual at this point in my life, so it may be that I hadn't really fully developed my psychic abilities at that point. So I put that deck on my bookcase, and it sat there, I swear to God, for 10 years. I didn't do anything with it. Other than one time I did ask, well, if I was to study one of the cards, which one would it be? And I pulled a card, and it was a major arcana card. And so I knew that I had something going on with that. So then when I moved to Colorado, I met a woman who was a professional reader. And I said, I've always wanted to learn how to do this. And so what she did was she said, all right, I'm going to put a class together. And she did this class. It was the only time she ever taught was that one class. But one of the things that she taught me, which I think was so valuable, is to look at the tarot cards and think of them as a window into another world, and to see them as being alive, and to not get stuck in this card means this card means that. You can look at a card and you can see different pieces of it, different pieces of the drawings, different symbology. And each time I look at the card, it may say something different. In fact, I often find that I get surprised. I try to have that happen more often than not. I mean, I have a certain standard awareness of the cards because I've done it so much. I mean, I've done thousands of readings, worked for every psychic line you can ever think of, including Dionne Warwick, Psychic Friends, and et cetera, et cetera. And I've worked at psychic fairs all over the United States, and I've done lots and lots of readings. But I think a really important thing in relating to the tarot is to think of it as a dynamic system and be willing to be surprised by it. And the other thing that happened after I took that class was I started reading the work of Rachel Pollack and Mary Greer, who are two wonderful tarot teachers who I actually had the opportunity to spend a week with at Omega Institute in New York a few years ago. We did an in-depth week-long study of the tarot. And I'm so glad I did that because Rachel's probably the most influential person in my life. Mary has become a very good friend of mine. But Rachel was really, I think, the great teacher. And it's unfortunate that she's passed away a year or two ago. But anybody that asks me what I recommend, I would say, get her 78 Degrees of Wisdom books and read them. And of course, I teach as well, and I have my own approach to teaching. So that's more or less my journey and how it all.
When we talk about tarot, Richard, in today's marketplace or in today's world, there are lots of artists and creative people that take the tarot and there are lots of approaches, designs, styles, ways to do the tarot. Like there's a ton out there if you go out there and look, just like you saying, I picked up the book and that didn't make sense to me with these cards, right? I bought this book and looked at it and that didn't make sense. I love the fact that it's when you took it through your own image, your own review of that style. And I know a lot of people would poo-poo what I'm saying, especially artists that have a deck and a book and they want you to refer to their book. But I think a person picking up any kind of deck, an oracle deck, a tarot deck, what do you see in the cards? What stands out to you is an intuitive way or, a way of using your experiences, your viewpoints to kind of look at the card and see what this card is saying to you. I love doorways because I've always said tarot cards are like doorways in time.
Yeah, I say windows, but doors is good. Let me just make this point. I think there are a lot of oracle decks out there. And I think some tarot decks are actually oracle decks rather than true tarot. Mm-hmm. A real true tarot deck, in my thinking, is founded on the teachings of the Golden Dawn, the Golden Dawn Society that existed in the late 18th century. And they took the tarot that had been around for who knows centuries and expanded it and clarified the symbology and wrote about the symbology. So I like any of those books like Paul Foster Case, Arthur Waite, as reference material. Because they will say, well, look there's a reason why the Hierophant is holding this rod with 3 bars and a ball at the top of it. That symbolizes something. And I think it's important to know the symbology. I think there are a lot of tarot decks where the artists don't really know the symbology. They just go, well, this would be a great medium for me to do my art. So they do the art and they leave off some symbology on the card, so it's not what I would call a true tarot deck. But it still could be useful because it could be thought of as an oracle tool. Oracle decks, people just get creative and they come up with imagery. And if you are intuitive, if you work with your psychic power, then through that imagery that's on the card, whether it was developed by just this one artist or whether there's a history of it, that material will come through and will be valuable to you. So understanding that and accepting that, I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, because I work with some cards called the soul cards. And they ask the artist, well, what do these cards mean? And she goes, I don't know. I just thought they might be useful. And I love those cards because they don't have a pre-assigned meaning. So what I do with them is if I have a client who's just like kind of shut down psychically, I will ask them to draw some cards from the soul card deck and to actually tell me what they see. Then they start to share their story. Then they start to bring to the surface what their issues are. And sometimes that's the only way you can be helpful to people. Now, I also want to get a shameless self plug in here. You know that I created my own tarot deck and that I added 6 additional cards. So you could argue that maybe my deck is not a traditional tarot deck. I like to think of it as an evolved deck because I keep all the symbology from the Rider-Waite tradition, the Golden Dawn tradition, and then I've added some new cards that I think add more dimension to to what the tarot offers.
So what were the 6 cards that you added, and why did you choose to add those 6 cards?
Well, that's a little bit of a story, so I hope you fasten your seatbelt on this one. When I first started to study, after I took that class, I started studying with some Native American people, a White Mountain Apache medicine woman and a Yaqui medicine woman. And they were really, really strong on put the tarot aside and learn how to read psychic imagery, learn how to read tea leaves, which I do, or I could read a dirty dinner plate. So I started working with them, and I said to them, I just feel like the tarot is not complete. I feel like there's some things missing. And they said to me, well, what do you think is missing? I said, well, there isn't a card that really represents healing to me. So I thought that would be an important card to add to the deck. But and in addition to that, I thought there ought to be something that's more about humor. So I came up with this idea of the humor card, or what I call the Joker, which is very different than the Fool, and it's important to understand that distinction. And then I also thought about and felt that there should be a teacher card. Now, the Hierophant is an instructor, and he conveys the wisdom of a sacred tradition. In fact, the word Hierophant means keeper of the sacred text. And I think of them as the people that teach us about the spiritual traditions. And there's absolutely great value in that, to go to tradition and to see what those teachings have to offer us. But I also think of the hermit as being kind of like a counterpoint to the Hierophant, because what the hermit represents is the willingness to investigate without any preconceived ideas. They're willing to hold up your lantern looking for the truth, understanding that maybe the truth is not anything that we have a really clear concept of. So tradition and investigation, and they are kind of, they can be complementary is one way to say it, and they kind of balance each other. So then I thought that what the teacher's about is he doesn't teach you what to think, which the Hierophant does. He teaches you how to think, which is the hermit, is how to investigate. And so he works on integrating the two of them together. And more than that, he teaches you how to trust your own ability to think, how to trust your own intuition, how to, not look for, well, here's the answer to this problem, here's the answer to that problem. It's how do I use my consciousness to explore a problem and come up with a truly innovative answer, which may draw on tradition, but it may also be looking at things in an innovative way. So I had the healer, I had the teacher, I had the Joker. I said, well, where are you going to put these cards in a deck? And I started to think about the fact that you can't just stick them on the end of a deck, which I've seen other people do. That doesn't really make sense to me, because I think of the major arcana as being the Fool's Journey, which other people do as well. There's a book called Jungian Tarot by a woman named Sally Nichols, and she really has this idea of looking at each card in the major arcana as a step on the path of spiritual growth. And I definitely like that idea. And so I thought, well, I've got to integrate these cards based upon that idea. But how do I do that? I started looking at numerology, and I started seeing that some cards really, really make sense from a numerological perspective. like the magician as a card number one. The word one means one. It means whole. It's unity. And the magician is very much about unity. It's the unity of the heavens. He raises his lightning rod to the heavens, and then he points his other hand down. He channels spiritual principle into form. To people who do not understand what a magician is, they'll say, oh, look, he's doing magic. But a magician does not bend the universe to his will. What he does is he channels universal truth into form. That appears to be magical if you don't know how to do that. But that's what he does. He conveys that. And he's card number one also because he's confirmation for the fool that there is a reason to take this journey of evolutionary development, which is my deck is called the Evolutionary Tarot. And so I started looking at all the cards and saying, do they correspond with numbers? The other thing I noticed was that if you arrange the cards into, there's 27 now in my deck, which means three rows of 9. So each number is equally represented. There's a 1 card in the first row as a card number 1 card in the second row is card number 10, and 1 card in the third row, which is interestingly enough, card number 19. When you add, in numerology, you add the numbers together to reduce it to a primary number. So 9 and 1 equals what? 10. So there's your third 1 card. And the 3 rows actually all have meaning as well. The first row is all of the different ways that man interfaces with his world. Magician, high priestess, the empress, the emperor, the hierophant, the hermit, the teacher, the healer. These are all ways in which mankind interacts with the world. The chariot, which I think is also another word for the chariot, is the warrior card. And so you look at all the ways people are in the world. And then when you get to the teacher card, what the teacher does is he interacts with the fool and he says, okay, if you want to find your power, you must know yourself. And that takes him to the second row, or it takes us to the second row, which is card number 10, which is strength. And the strength card is about, look, the woman has got the lion and she's got her hands on the head of the lion and she's looking into the jaws of the beast. Well, the lion is a symbol for ego. So if you're going to find your power in life, you must figure out who you are. You must figure out what your ego is. What are your, ego's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a tool. If you don't have ego, you can't do what you do. I can't do what I do. I have to have an ego because I have to function in the world. It's stupid I think it's stupid when people say, oh, I want to become egoless. You want to get free of egotism, where you're narcissistic and it's all about you. You want to get free of that, but you have to have some sense of yourself. You must have some sense of confidence. You must have some sense of, I have a relationship with the universe, and I can allow the universe universal energy to flow through me. But if I'm not here, if I don't have an ego, I'm not here, and there's no vessel, so there's no way the universe can manifest. I know that's a lot of ideas right there, but anyway.
No, that makes perfect sense. I had a student get mad at me once because she's like, I can get rid of my ego. And I said, not in this world. We have to have ego. It is our balance of everything. You can't get rid of it. You might learn to dance with it. You'll learn to understand it. You'll learn to work with it, but it doesn't go completely away.
Right. So second row begins with the looking at yourself. And then the card that follows the strength card is where I put the Joker, because you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You cannot take yourself too seriously. You have to have a sense of humor. Excuse me just a second. And then you go through all of the cards in the second row. Temperance, death, hangman. And the final card in the second row is one of my new cards. It's what I call the soul card. You are two things. You are ego, but you're also soul. And I think a lot of people don't really think, well, what is my soul? What's that about? It's a part of ourselves that's birthless, deathless, timeless. It's a part of ourselves that comes into the world and incarnates in order to have the journey of enlightenment, that go on the evolutionary journey to become aware of the universe and become aware of what's true in the universe. The soul takes that journey. The soul is not corrupted by ego stuff. You can have soul and you can layer ego stuff on the soul so you're not really aware of it, but it never goes away. It's always, the ego is always there. The soul is always there in the background. And understanding that you have a soul makes it possible for you to accept the death of pieces of yourself, which is what you have to do. You have to drop off ego stuff that no longer serves you and assume new identity. Well, you have to have a sense of there's something behind that process, and that's where the soul is, because it's birthless and deathless. And once you get to that place where you understand you have a soul, then you're ready for the third row, which is what I call the transpersonal. Each card in the third row represents a major influence from the universe or from consciousness or from the creator, if you will. Every single card speaks about what does the creator of the universe, what's the agenda of that? What is it up to? To talk about one briefly, which is people have a lot of trouble with, is the Tower card. People look at the Tower card and they go, oh my God, that's horrible. Like something really bad is going to happen. And sometimes that card does represent something really, really disastrous. I had the Tower show up once in my life, and I went to work. And while I was at work, my apartment caught on fire, and I lost all of my clothes. I lost 2 animals. They died in the fire. And I lost the apartment too. I mean, I lost everything. And then I thought I turned that off. I'm sorry. Here, let me get that. Get rid of that. Right, so what was I saying? So I had this fire, and I'm like, what the hell? What's going on here? What's this about? And I struggled with that for a while because I didn't think I deserved, if you will, that to lose everything. But out of that came a whole lot of very interesting things. One was, wasn't long before I had clothes again. People did a clothing drive, and people gave me clothing, and just other things that that sort came out. But also, the next time I did the expo that you and I work at, I had so many people come to me with grief issues, which I would have not been able to be of any use to them if I hadn't gone through the grief of losing animals as a result of that fire. That's very much a Tower event. But also think about, what is a tower? A tower is a man-made structure. Why do we build towers? We build towers to protect ourselves. But the consequence, excuse me, I get fired up. The consequence of building a tower is we isolate ourselves. We would like to stay in our ivory towers or in our towers of protection and not have to deal with the adversity of living. Life is full of adversity. Life is full of challenge. And when we try to isolate ourselves from the evolutionary journey, from the spiritual journey, when we try to do that, what happens is the universe goes, no, lightning bolt. The lightning bolt hits the tower, blows up the tower, and the 2 people are falling to earth. Well, it isn't that they're falling to their death, because the tarot is all metaphor. It is they are being knocked out of their isolation. But on the Tower card are also these little yellow dots. They're called yuds. And yuds represent blessings. Like the blessing that came out of my fire was that I realized that there were many wonderful, generous people in the world that are supportive, and that material stuff I lost could get replaced. And there was also the yud of, by going through grief, I was able to be of service to others. So all of the cards in the third row represents archetypal energies that are not personal. The Tower card is not about the universe picking on you and saying, oh, you're a bad person, so we're going to punish you with a Tower event. The Tower card is the universe saying you will participate in the game. Everybody will participate in the game of life. And no matter how much you try to protect yourself, you can't. So you might as well hang loose and enjoy the ride. And, you know, like some of the other cards in the third row, like people have a hard time with the Devil card. In my deck, I don't call it the Devil card. I call it the Dark Angel. Because like with the Tower, what the Devil's card represents is the part of the universe that says, you must, here is your issue. Like the little flame, the Devil's holding a torch and he's kind of lighting the guy's butt on fire. That's the fire, first of all, is the element of transformation. So the element of transformation is saying, you must face your issue. You must face your fear. You must face your boogeyman. The Devil is nothing more than the boogeyman. If you look at it carefully, you realize that it's mostly a creature of imagination. The wings are too small for it to fly. The legs are not right for it to walk. It's half hairy, half not. It's half warm. It's half cold. It's all about imagination. But you have to face your fear in order to get past the issue that the fear represents. Like when you're a kid and you're scared of the dark, until one day you say, I'm sick of being scared of the dark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my bedroom. I'm going to shut the door and I'm going to turn out the light. And you do this. And I remember doing this as a kid. And I said, all right, boogeyman, come get me. And what happened? Nothing. So from that point forward, I wasn't scared of the dark anymore. But I had to find that courage in order to do that. We have to find the courage to face our life issues.
I love your perspective on the cards. One of the teachers that taught me was the first row was about the physical body or the physical world. The second row was about the soul. And the third row was about spirit. You know, your interaction. Same ideas, just different wordings. But I love that because I could see how all that worked.
Yep.
And how you bring that tarot card together. And I love that you have your own deck that has your energy in it that you read from.
Oh, thank you.
Can people purchase your deck?
Oh, yeah. I sell them.
Yay.
I sell them. I have quite a few still that, you know, I did a printing about, 10 or 15 years ago, and I still have some. And I have books that explain, I have two tarot books. I have a book on the minor arcana called the Not So Minor Arcana. And then I also have the Tarot, the Evolutionary Journey, which explains the thing I was talking about earlier, the Fool's Journey through the Major Arcana. And it talks about the numerology, and also have added some symbology and some other stuff. So I have those two books. And when you talked about the similarities between your teacher and what I just talked about, of course they're going to be similar, because if an oracle system is really well developed, it's going to be tapping into an archetype. And an archetype is universal. All archetypes have some variation within different cultures, but they're all essentially the same archetype. Like the simplest example of that would be there's the archetype of mother. In the Tarot, that's the Empress card. And some way or another, we all have to deal with the energy of mothers. We all have mothers, if you will. Nobody comes into the world in any other way except through the mother.
I love that. I love that. I love your perspective. I like what you bring. So before we wrap it up here, I would like to know your perspective on what the minor arcana is, because you've talked about the major.
Yeah.
What are the energies of the minor in your perspective?
Well, I think you have to start with looking at the minor arcana as four different groups. And each of these groups, it corresponds with an element. For instance, cups corresponds with water. Okay. The the wands corresponds with fire. And also that the 4 minor arcana suits also corresponds with 4 aspects of ourselves. We have emotions, and water in the tarot is a symbol for emotions. So the minor arcana cards about that are cups relates to emotional issues. Like, for instance, the 2 of cups shows 2 people standing and they're exchanging cups. Well, that represents the process of courtship, which is very much an emotional activity. It's not about becoming friends. It's about developing a relationship. It's weaving your life energy together, which is the symbol of the 2 snakes at the top of the card that are interwoven. And then at the top of that, what's called the caduceus, is the lion, which again represents ego. But the ego there is the ego of the relationship. Okay. So cups represents emotions, represents, and it's symbolized through water. The wands represents fire, which corresponds with our passion. Now, our passion is different than our emotion. Passion is when you have a feeling like an emotion and you go, oh, that's exciting, like a little kid going to see a ballet performance and going, oh, that is so wonderful. I want to learn how to do that. They have an emotional reaction. They channel it into an activity, becoming a student of dance with a goal in mind, become a dancer, right? The element of fire transforms your life. When you have a passion about something, like I have a passion about tarot, so what do? I study the tarot. I see I've read many, many different books. On my desk, Rachel Pollack, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. I still refer to her when I'm a little dry on certain things. The other 2 suits, wands and cups, I talked about. Okay, let's talk about pentacles. Pentacles represents earth or form or physicality. People often think of pentacles just as money. And certainly it is money, because money is a kind of a physical expression. But it's a physical expression or a physical form. So pentacles relates to putting things into form. I like to say it's with pentacles, it's money, but it's also the magic of things coming into form, and therefore manifestation. Money, magic, and manifestation. And then the final suit is the swords, and the swords represents the intellect. Air is the element. And of course, where do we, when you look at a cartoon, there's like a little bubble over the guy's head, and it's got his thoughts in it, so it's like indicating that in the air, in the realm of thought, is where our intellect or our ideas are. And sword cards very much talk about how we perceive it. Swords can represent clear thinking, but they also can represent our bias, or our limited thinking, or our misuse of the mind, if you will. So there you have it.
I love that. I love that. So we will have your website in the bottom throughout the video. So what are some things that people could work with you on? I'm sure on your website, do you have your books and your deck on there where people can get them, or?
Yep. All of that's on there, and they can buy it from Amazon, but if they buy it from me directly, I will sign the book for them, and maybe even meet with them and talk about the book if they want a little bit, meet over coffee or something. What was the other part of your question?
Well, you also have classes on there, and
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure we
I
can
have,
get readings and all that.
Yeah, on my website is my phone number, my email, so you can contact me for readings. And like I said, I have clients all over the world that contact me to do readings. But also, let's see, what was the other part of your question?
Your intro to tarot. Don't you have an intro class?
There is a brief explanation of each card on my website. So there's that. That's like my little white book. I did it, in the website rather than do a printing thing, which would increase my printing costs, so make it a little bit more affordable. I just did a little mini interpretation on my website. I also have several free lectures on my website. I did a really interesting talk on zombies and also on vampires. And what do they symbolize, and why are they showing up in our culture so predominantly at this time? What is that about? So they can look at my free lectures. I'm also going to be doing a podcast or a talk about the mythologies associated with the holidays of this time of year, which has to do with Christmas and Jesus and the Christmas tree and lots of other things that relate, and how those are all pieces of mythology. Now, people say, well, it's a myth, as if it means that it's not true. Well, myths aren't necessarily literally true, or like what Joseph Campbell says, just because a myth is not literally true doesn't mean it doesn't hold any truth. So there's stuff on my website about that as well. I've got 2 books that I wrote on reinterpretation of Greek mythology for modern society. We're probably running over here because I'm getting.
No, I love that. No, I love that. You have so much to offer that people can check out. So make sure you go and look at the website and see what all he has on there, because I know he has lots of information and insight on there. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, and let me just say this: my commitment to my life, to spirit, is to be of service to others. I aspire to teach. I want to awaken the flame within my students to become conscious participants in the evolutionary process. I want to support them in having the best life possible. And it doesn't mean you have to be spiritual. To be spiritual, you have to give up being in the material world. I'm very much in the material world, and I love materialism. I love music and I love dance. And if I didn't have a body, I couldn't dance. If I didn't have ears, I couldn't hear music. There's lots of ways in which we can celebrate life. But when we don't do our work, sometimes that gets in the way of us enjoying life. So I want to support people and having good lives. And that's my commitment, is to be of service.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show, Richard. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you for those listening and hanging out. I hope that you will like and comment and follow us on your favorite channel. And I hope you will return again to this show, Sacred Magic Podcast. I wish you a most sacred and magical week, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email. Vialet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you loved the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.